Ready? Hey guys, this is the Beyond the Dojo podcast. I'm Lauren.
I'm Jeremiah.
It's good.
Okay.
We're making sure we're not recording. Especially since we're trying another format where we're also videoing the podcast. So a little bit different here. Also, just disclaimer, if it gets kind of loud, it is about to storm outside, so hopefully
in the summer.
Hopefully all the power doesn't go out. We end up in here in the dark.
Well, if it does go out, no one else will know because we won't put out the whole product. So
we'll put out the video, and then we're just making liars of ourselves.
Yeah, whatever.
So random thought. This was really funny. We have a new student who is in our seniors class, and she comes to our evening classes too. And she's super excited, super animated, and she's really into karate. She trained a karate style way back in the day, and she's super consistent now. She's like, she said this is the most committed she's been to like anything in her entire life besides her marriage.
Oh, wow.
So we're really excited to have her. Hey, Vivian.
Hi, Vivian.
She was looking.
Thank you.
She was looking at videos on YouTube recently, and she said, it was a video and they were doing katas, but there were people in them. Talking about like watching a bunkai.
Yeah, watching a bunkai.
Oh, that was the best. I was like, yes, man. There were people in them. That's how it's supposed to work.
On a side note of that, just a couple things I noticed and was concerned about was, when a star flashes bright, it usually fades quickly. Mm-hmm. And I was concerned that, especially with her and her age, and if she had any reoccurring injuries and stuff. And the cool thing about dealing with older women and older men is the fact that if you say, hey, you need to kind of pace yourself, they don't really give you static. They kind of learn and try to adapt because they realize what's going on, and they really appreciate the longevity of our approach. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah. It is cool that because of we live in Florida, we actually have the ability to train lots of senior adults. Yeah. Well, not lots, but some so far. So
those who are interested.
Yeah, so that's
Shotokan
actually.
Karate Hemi fan.
You don't.
Holla at us.
Anyway, so that's been fun. Anyhow,
we should flash our number in front because we got video now. Just 1-800.
No, I don't actually remember what number episode this is. I think it's 31.
I got a question. It's unplanned, so I'm gonna throw you on the spot.
Okay, what?
It talked about an idea the other day about kind of taking and looking at other people's oyo and bunkai and kind of doing them and seeing if we not to be not critical, but not judgmental in a sense where we're just okay, let's see if this really works. What would be the weak points? Where could we, could there be a punch in here or there, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Karate people react to.
Jesus, you almost poked me in the eye. Holy moly. Anyways, hiya.
Y'all gotta go watch the Uncle Roger watching the BBC lady make rice.
So my question to the audience is, leave a comment below letting us know if you would think that'd be interesting or not.
So basically, it'd be us watching other people doing bunkai or application or anything similar, or maybe even not that. Maybe we'll stray away from that. But we are going to attempt to do what they're teaching, and then we're going to break it down a little bit.
Attempt to break it down. Obviously, if we can't break it down, then it's legit.
Right.
At least in our eyes, because our opinion matters.
We're gonna do it whether you like it or not. But if you want to see us do it, if you make us feel great, if you leave a comment. Don't steal our idea because we'll know where you got it from. Just saying.
Because we stole the idea from somebody else.
Actually, I stole it from Two Set Violins.
Yeah, exactly.
And from all the other React channels. So.
We're kind of getting to that point where it's we're looking to other YouTube channels for topic or content ideas in a sense, Sure. We were watching another one about Aikido or listening to the podcast, and that was really good, man.
We're talking about
the martial arts journey?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Aikido guys talking about the relevance in modern martial arts and how they can make their art more relevant.
Yeah.
And I felt like in a way that's kind of what we're going through as traditional martial artists who aren't in the sport aspect of it.
Yeah.
We're not really heavily involved in it. I think that's where we got to look, and maybe I think it's maybe a next topic. Maybe sometime in the future we have a pod topic about how we keep our art and our approach relevant. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and establish that I can't speak or pronounce certain words.
Relevant.
That's okay, because we have Karen here who will correct me.
That's not what Karen does. Karen tells the manager that you can't speak right.
since she already thinks she's the manager.
This is true. Okay. So anyway, today's podcast is whatever, because Jeremiah's going to have to explain it.
Okay, so my idea of the podcast was that I feel like organizations now are the new styles or sub-styles of certain karate. For example, and no disrespect to any of these organizations, but when you see a Nishiyama guy, you know that guy is from Nishiyama's group just by the way what they emphasize, you know. For even another contemporary of Nishiyama would be Kase, and how he literally his what he called his karate was Shotokan karate Kase-ha.
Oh yeah.
So that Kase-ha had made it like something different, you know? And you can see it in the USNKF, when you go to the more sporty kind of karate, their karate looks different than the traditionalists, the JKAs, the ISKAs, yeah. And if you look even, to the current and newer Japanese organizations like the Kanazawa's group, how they approach their kata, how they make their stances. Yahada's group, how it's a lot more what he did, a lot of that rotation, excessive rotation kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then even to the JKS with Sai, and how a lot of it was whippy and this and that. Although the overall look of the JKS is not that, like where it's super whippy and laxed, but it's a lot more relaxed than what you'd say from what they broke off from in the JKA, where it's a little more staunch. Mm-hmm. I think that is what I want to talk about, is like, why is that happening? Why is that phenomenon happening now? Why do they feel like organizations feel like they have to brand themselves differently to make a name?
Yeah. You had said, they're the organizations are the new Ryuha of Shotokan. We probably should have looked up what those suffixes actually mean, but what essentially are you talking about with that?
Ruha is, I think, the Japanese suffixes to distinguish subcultures, arts of a main family. Mm-hmm. So if you look at Shitoru, that's the style, Shitoru. Mm-hmm. But then you have like 4 or 5 different family styles that is under Shitoru. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, is there's the Ru and then there's the Ha. And I think in some organizations, they do it in such a way that it's very respectful to the original karate or form. Mm-hmm. So to me, but they do subtle things differently. Mm-hmm. It's a Ha thing. Okay. But then there's some organizations that take it to the extreme, and now it doesn't even look like Shotokan anymore. Let's say even like Shotokai, where it's Shotokan, but not the same approach. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Although Shotokai has been around for a long time, and is a legitimate art, obviously, but it does have that same kind of approach or idea where it's just so far away you can't tell. You can tell a little bit, but not,
Yeah.
Ideally, I guess, or yeah.
Yeah. So what are some modern examples of how these organizations are essentially differentiating themselves from each other? So just talking about the actual, maybe just the actual like technical or mechanical approach. How are they different from each other?
Well, technical and mechanical approach, I don't think it wasn't as much technical or mechanical approach as it was, stylistic flares back in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. So, like Kanazawa's group with Goju Shio, Goju Shio Dai, and how those names are switched, and how he had his own little thing on those katas. So to me, I don't see any reason why that was necessary.
Yeah. But I mean, like, if you look at someone from one organization and you look at someone from another organization, generally you can tell they're not from the same organization by the way that they train.
Oh, absolutely.
So what is it about their karate that is actually different from each other? What kind of examples do they have from actual structure, that kind of thing?
I think it's structured in the syllabus. Mm-hmm. I think it's the approach, how they go about their training, like what they're focused on. Mm-hmm. Like, instead of focusing on proper mechanics, or let's say this organization is based on application of karate, or this organization is based on sport or traditional training, whatever that is, they want to focus on making something just enough different to say, oh yeah, that's from that group.
What just enough different?
Not driving the rear leg in a reverse punch, Nishiyama's group.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, mechanical or technical differences.
Mechanical stuff would be the rear bent knee or the majority of the Nishiyama's group has this idea of floor ground
reaction force.
Ground reaction force, and I believe that the way they do it, it shows a certain form, and that form is the rear knee tends to be flexed and not.
That's right.
Yeah, it's flexed, and their tips over tucked. Their hips over tucked.
Yeah, which means that they're not actually using ground reaction force at all.
To our understanding,
yeah.
But we understand that to be.
Yeah.
Their understanding that they are, and you can't dog someone for believing in a certain way. So
well, it's a scientific principle. It has nothing to do with karate.
Hold on. That's further along in the conversation.
Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about, like physically. Let's say in a weightless group. Yeah, the KUGB.
Yeah.
Over long stance, super deep and contorted front knee, exaggerated movement.
That, like, boxy look.
Yeah, that real boxy look.
Yeah.
You know. Mm-hmm. AJK has that same kind of boxy look.
So I am most familiar with this one. So this is the one where your hips are super externally rotated. Yeah. So your thighs are actually being pushed out when you're in stances. And they have this idea where they super emphasize like outward tension. And what actually happens is rather than having like a pyramidal type shape where you're making a straight diagonal line from your hips to your knee to your ankle, right. You actually push the knees out. So if you're in a front stance or a horse stance, you're actually
contorting your body.
Was it varus or valgus, whatever, and where your knees actually are pushing out. So you're putting your joints in an extreme abducted position. That's hard to move from.
A side note, sorry, I'm so used to just talking to Lauren on these podcasts that I have not looked at the camera very much.
That's fine.
How you doing? So that's kind of what we're talking about. Stylistic differences. They're subtle, but they're within an art, they're obvious. They're like super obvious.
Yeah. Another one would be like wrist position, right?
Wrist position.
Like, so your fist kind of drooping down versus whatever else people do.
I would say that's a common thing with most karate, especially Shotokan.
Yeah.
Where the fist is flat, which originated from, I think the JK was one that really forced it and worked that where the fist was down and flat.
Top of the forearm all the way to your wrist is really flat.
But we know, as research is shown us, that that's not the proper alignment.
Well, it's not optimal for
not optimal for what we're trying to do with it.
Yeah.
So,
no boxer punches like that.
Right.
By the way.
So the other thing is it's an egotistical thing.
Okay.
So the head instructor, the president, whatever governing board, they want to kind of have their stamp on people. So instead of focusing on certain things that would make your technique more efficient, a better movement, just simply more efficient, they focus on a thing that makes them stand out.
Yeah.
You know, and that's ridiculous. That's just absolutely ridiculous. No disrespect to Yahada's group, the KWF, but that super over-rotated back fizz to that really exaggerated compression to drive and stuff like that, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And you should have that as part of your training, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But it shouldn't be focused so much and drilled so much that you actually have wearing, joint issues from it. Yeah. Those contorted positions are not safe.
Yeah.
And the force that they create to try to stop that is not safe.
Yeah.
Certain athletes have the ability to do things, and they expect everybody else to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand that maybe they're just gifted with better genetics, better structure, where they can do things without putting themselves in issue.
Well, it's funny you talk about, like, the ego thing, because, like, the whole premise of being a martial artist in most cases is to rid yourself of your ego and try to, like, either reach some sort of enlightenment or reach a point where or continue on the path toward mastery, because you're never actually there. You're always trying to improve. It's kind of funny. We spend a lot of time on this podcast, like, ragging other people, and it's not because, like, we think we've arrived. It's just, like, maybe if we knock people down a couple notches, they'll realize, like, we're all on the same path. We're just at different points on the path.
Absolutely.
It's interesting that these more athletic individuals... Okay, so I'm a personal trainer, right? So my job as a trainer is to take exercises and or movement patterns, per se, let's say, and I have a client try out the movement pattern, and if they can do the movement pattern proficiently, maybe we just stick with that, or maybe if they're more advanced, we'll progress it. But if they can't do it, then we regress it. Or sometimes I can look at a person and I can regress the exercise for them to try the regression and then eventually progress into the other. But it would be very there are trainers who do this where they feel good about themselves as a trainer if their client cannot do what they're asking. If it's way too hard or if it exhausts them way too much, then they want to throw this, oh, well, you're just lazy, or well, you're a quitter. No, they're just not fit, or they're not physically capable of doing that thing. That's nothing but ego, and you're not helping anybody.
Yeah.
So why a leader of an organization who's trying to bring people together along that path, why they would feel like they have to make themselves feel better by showing off their own natural ability, obviously knowing nobody else can do it, so maybe there's something wrong here.
So
I don't get it.
My conclusion sometimes, and I hate to say the majority of my experience with organizations, is that their intentions never to bring people together to promote the art itself. Although they guise it that way, in reality, majority of the guys that have to start these organizations are trying to establish a legacy of themselves.
I think in some small way, sometimes they start that way. I think they start off thinking that they're going to do that, and then in a lot of cases they end up falling off the path, and that's the problem with like not having people there to hold you in check. That's why it's good to have like split power, three branches of government, that kind of thing, checks and balances. Merca.
Right. And we're finding that you have to have more than two parties too. Let's be real, so in all honesty, if we would take a hint from what's happening right now, we as karate people in organizations, we should realize that I think a governing board with distinct roles for everybody in the governing board who if you're going to have a technical advisor, he has the last say, and what you do is in technique. That's it. You don't question him. You just do it because you chose as a group that man is the best or that woman's the best leader.
Yeah.
So it kills me when people do that.
Yeah, like having individual roles split between multiple people so that everyone is having a say, or at least having like an advisory board where you're actually not like in word but in action coming together and being like, hey, this is the direction we want to try to go. Are we all in unison on this? Let's hash it out, whatever. Right. Obviously, you're not always going to have like unanimous votes, but that's the point of having a board, is you have to have some pushback from people so that you can be challenged and figure out how to move on. I guess that would be the way to get past the ego part. Right.
And as long as it's a principle-based karate, it's really difficult. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult to go off that path if you adhere to the principles that are established already. Mm-hmm. So
accountability.
Yeah, so ego to me is a big part of this whole, like, I'm going to make my organization look different.
Yeah, okay.
Secondly is the branding and more branding than over progression.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do it this way. Why? Because that's the way I do it. Not because it's important or better or more significant impact or more efficient, but that's the way I do it, and I've had success doing it that way.
Or we've always done it where you step in, punch, and the punch ends at the time you stop stepping, but now we're going to step and then we're going to punch because we're just going to change it now, and not everyone has to change.
That looks better. Sometimes I think some of these changes in the organization and requirements is based on a misunderstanding of a concept that was correct, because in reality, if you start your punch when you step in punch, it's a push, right? But if you wait till 90% of the step is done, you're too late.
Yeah.
It's like you're missing the sweet spot.
Your punch is going to be too late, yeah.
Right. It's a sweet spot thing. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't understand that. They'll say, oh, it's this way or it's that way. Mm-hmm. Well, no, it's your body. It's your human body. And it's like a lot of things athletic. It's not always absolute. Sometimes there's a range of movement or range of time that it could be very good, and then it's late or it's too early and it's ineffective.
Well, it gets more complicated because you can have a principle where now you're trying to apply it, so you're not just doing the step and punch, you're trying to apply it, and then it may change a little bit more. But the point is like you have to have some kind of black and white something that you're referring to,
as
and
a basis.
It really should be based off of like sound principles of movement.
Yeah.
What was I listening to? I was listening to some kind of like athletic podcast the other day or whatever, and they're like, or maybe it was the Aikido podcast. They're like, there was the Aikido podcast. They're like, the human body only moves like efficiently in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like there's only so many ways to do it. There's either kind of right or there's like kind of wrong, and then obviously how you apply that may change, but how you're doing it in principle is kind of So over progression. So what do you mean by like
Well,
over progression?
they would, for example, like JKA, as I was coming up in a JKA club in Japan, we were taught to do certain moves in the hand kata because better for tournament.
Okay.
More style, better points. Not because it was a more effective movement or it had a better meaning or there was something else. It was just so that you looked better. A prime example is most people nowadays when they go to punch Chudan level, they hit the chest bone, not the solar plex, because it's too high and too square. But in tournament and doing kata, it looks good because the lines look better to people.
I had never heard that until you said that the other day. That's crazy.
That's how it was. That was how it was from '87 to '91 in Misawa, Japan.
Yeah.
And that was a JKA club that produced world champions, kata world champions.
Oh my god. Okay.
So that being said,
yeah. So you just said good versus bad. What do you mean by that?
that's the real question, right? The real question is this branding a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
Is it really? Because in some cases, I think it is good.
Okay.
If your intention is to preserve a person's approach.
Okay.
So, Nishiyama's people.
Yeah.
I appreciate that they continue to do that. I just wish the followers would go, okay, this is what Nishiyama left us. What can we do with it? Obviously, he didn't teach us everything. Well, there's something here. I wish they would be more critical in their thought and more investigative instead of just accepting, oh, this is it.
So it's funny because maybe in the foreword in Best Karate by Nakayama, he actually talks about how karate is not supposed to be stagnant. It's supposed to be living and it's supposed to progress.
Right.
Not progress as in like change for branding purposes, but progress in accordance with scientific principles. So you're not supposed to just always do the same warm-up because that's the warm-up we did in the 70s, so that's the warm-up we're doing now. That stuff's crazy. So things like that, and even taking your movement and looking at it maybe from a biomechanical or a scientific lens, if you have that ability, or if you know someone who is further along than you, like looking critically at what you're doing, and not just because some great master did it that way. Instead, like, it's not to say like they sucked. We're not saying that. But things can always be better. I mean, look at the videos of Funakoshi doing Teki Shodan.
Yeah.
No one does Teki Shodan like that. And Funakoshi was like the master, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah. It progressed beyond that. So how can we do them justice? I mean, we're supposed to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? We're supposed to be able to take what they did and continue it on. It would be kind of disheartening for a lot of them to know that you just took what they gave you and just did nothing with it. There's a biblical principle. There's a biblical parable about that too. Yeah. About taking your money and digging it and hiding it in the dirt. Yeah. Hiding it in the dirt rather than investing it. Like, right. That's the same thing. It's like you're just hiding your money in the dirt because you're not changing anything. You're not growing. So.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, it's not a bad thing if people are trying to preserve what their teacher taught them and the path or the perspective he had. It's a bad thing when they just do what he did.
Yeah,
that's it, and not trying to see where he was trying to go or what he intended to be.
Yeah,
that's bad. And I don't mean to pick on the Nishiyama guys. It's just, for me, that's an easy example.
Yeah,
and everybody knows the look. So, but by the way, Nishiyama did produce 2 generations of the greatest American Shotokan practitioners ever.
Yep.
Ever. And you want to argue that, you can, but Yabe, Dalki, Uwal, who else?
Smith.
Frank Smith. Yeah. Obviously Frank Smith. These guys, they're amazing karateka. Amazing karateka. But when you look at their karate, they don't all look like exactly the same, nope. And they don't look like him.
Nope.
So there's something there, yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm not taking away from Nishiyama. Nishiyama was an amazing instructor and created and produced amazing karateka. Without him, the United States karate would be nowhere near what it's supposed to be, where it should be. But
thinking about that again for a second. Did I cut you off?
No.
So we talk about this a lot, like with our students, that we don't really want our students to look just like us.
Right.
We want them to have the principal idea and then apply it to their bodies, because right. Their bodies are going to be slightly different from ours. Now, that doesn't mean that the principle changes, but you actually have to have an understanding of what the principle is.
Exactly.
Driving with the back leg. there's a certain way to do it, and then it might look a little bit different, or it might be faster on somebody because they got little tiny baby legs or whatever.
Right.
So the idea is there, but can you take that idea and pass it along, and can you handle your students not looking like you?
Can you handle
or,
your students?
Or people in your organization not looking like you if you're the head guy.
Oh, wow. Even better, right? The organization. Because, sometimes what I've seen in the past is that the brightest stars in an organization usually gets pushed down for a long time. So guys that are coming up that have a lot of talent, understanding, they tend to get pushed down by the old guard. Okay. Kept held at place. And you could ask a majority of these guys that went through the JK instructor program and these other guys, they could tell you that, hey, yeah, I got to the point and then I was held back by the organization.
Yep. Well, that goes back to the
ego.
Well, it goes back to the I'm not going to give you your DON certificate that you trained 8 years for, and I'm not going to give you your black belt that you've already paid for, and that kind of BS.
Yeah, so to me, a lot of that is an old approach for an old world. And we need to, if we're looking as consumers of karate and you're looking to join an organization, I would encourage you to look past the head instructor and investigate the structure, the intention, and the logistics of the organization.
And the people who are higher ranked or in leadership.
Yeah. Because
look at their karate.
Look at their karate and if that's what you like and that's what you feel like is fulfilling at your path at that point, then you should go for it. But if you're just following the head instructor and how he looks and how charismatic he can be or she can be, the honeymoon only lasts so long. Yeah, you know what I mean? The honeymoon only lasts so long, and then the real person comes out, and all of a sudden you're trying to do things that doesn't fit your body.
What happens when the modern instructor, the ones that are alive now, the people who followed Nishiyama and some of these other guys that have passed away, they have now experienced this. What happens when some of our modern instructors, if you're just following the one person, what happens when they're gone?
Right.
Then what do you do? Do you do the same thing that these other generations of people have done, and you just train the exact same way because that's how the head guy trained, and there's nothing beyond that?
Yeah, Sam said it best. Is that you train for 50 years or you train 5 years for 10 times?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And, karate is different for everybody. What people want and get out of karate is going to be different, and I can respect that.
Yeah.
But as an art and as a gate holder for the future?
Gatekeeper?
Gatekeeper? Because we as instructors are gatekeepers, right?
People who have knowledge that may or may not choose to pass it on are gatekeepers.
Yeah. So anybody that has...
Or they have connections and stuff.
Yeah. So we as gatekeepers...
Yeah.
We need to take our art and consider the fact that, is it progressing? Is it, can we apply it to a modern situation? Can we do this in a modern context? Can we train in a modern context and still get the benefits that we had in traditional dojos, And I feel like our dojo does that well. That we train in a modern context and we still get the benefits, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally, that traditional training does.
I'm going to make a bet with y'all too. People who are listening. I looked at the camera, but now I'm looking at the mic, just in case you can see me through the microphone. I bet you in 20 years, there will either be way more organizations to the point that it's not really real organizations.
Let's be real, it's already that point.
Or there will be no organizations that people are really following.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get away from it.
I think it's going to be B, not A.
Hey, Scott Langley made a really great point about this. I had a conversation with him about organizations because they structure, there's a couple organizations, his included, that are structured way differently than a lot of the other organizations. And he said this. He said, it doesn't make sense to splinter off from a Japanese organization that you couldn't stand the structure of and then structure your organization the exact same way, because then you end up falling into the same traps.
Exactly.
So if you look at an organization and you're seeing tendencies of nothing against Japanese, but the majority of karate organizations are structured the same way.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, then you need to go to an organization that is not structured like that. Now, I can't really tell you how many there are because there aren't that many that I even know of. But if you're looking for an organization, just, keep that in mind.
Yeah. And then, honestly, I think after a certain point in your karate life, an organization doesn't really make that big of a difference.
Yeah. To be fair, people... They still have the mentality that if they go from one dojo to another dojo, that they need to have official documentation to show that they have. Look, this is 2020. most of the people are not asking for your Dan certificate to know whether or not you've actually made your rank.
Yeah.
Mostly because they don't care, or they're going to be able to look at you and tell if you are actually whatever rank you are. So to be honest with you, like, beyond training opportunities, which I think are the most important, like continuing education is the most important part of having an organization.
And our personal approach, I agree with you.
Yeah, like that's what every other field does, or every other sport pretty much does, is like you have continuing education or training opportunities. It's not about like ranking an official, this, that, and the other necessarily. It depends on if you're doing it as a professional or something.
Right.
That makes sense. If you're doing
There's
it
still
professionally.
licensing things and fees, and I'm sorry.
Sure.
Licensing things that only get through continuing education. So there are other motives to be in an organization.
Yeah.
But I would love for someone to create a karate organization based off an organization that is purely based on continuing education. You'll see that the organization itself isn't really that big, but the services it provides and the people who buy into those services is enormous.
Yeah.
And that's because they're not controlling, I think, the future. They're just giving you the opportunity to move forward.
Yeah. The big thing with an organization like that is you would still have to have that governing body, not the governing person, the governing body that says, okay, these are the kinds of ideas that we're trying to portray. These are the kinds of training that we will have. These are the type of people, but these are the people who have ideas that align with that idea. So, I mean, it can't just be a free-for-all, because then if you don't have some kind of direction, you're going to fall apart. But
yeah, we got to definitely change the structure of an organization for it to be useful in the future.
Yeah, because right now it's
getting pointless. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Especially now that a lot of organizations allow your members to train wherever they want to, which should have been the original thing anyways. It's making it to the point where I don't have to be a part of an organization to train with the teacher I want to train with. I could just show up at a seminar and train.
You could pay a little. I mean, the fee might be a little bit higher, but
whatever. You know, to me, that's just. I guess that's it.
Not trying to dog in. I mean. Well,
we are dogging.
We are dogging on organizations,
but it's not like
we're not discouraging you from joining one. Just think critically about it.
Or voicing our own issues and concerns about organizations, and even our own, solutions in a sense, But I just, in my personal opinion, I'd love to see an organization that was ran more professionally, with the intention of giving the services to help the network grow, without taking complete control of it. That's what a professional organization feels like to me, and I'd love to see one like that. But
like a legit business. Go read Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
He talks about being a business owner. That's kind of the stuff that you want to think about. I think.
Yeah,
obviously, we don't run an organization, but if you were running an organization, I think that's the mindset you would want to have. Is like, I don't have to be in control of everything. I have to learn how to delegate and let other people make decisions and do tasks so that it can function.
The only control you need to be in, if you're concerned as a business owner, is the hiring you do.
Yeah, and then
you just trust them do the job.
Holding people accountable. That's pretty much it.
Anyways.
Anything else you want to say about that?
No, not really.
Okay, what you working on?
I'm working on the side snap sections in Sochin. The counter rotation to back fist side snap pick to Fudodachi. Just to get my leg in the side snap position before I kick is kind of vital for me. If I were to just sling the leg straight over, my foot's already halfway out, my knee's out of position, everything else. And as y'all know, I've been working on side snap kick for the rest of my life.
He's been working on it for the rest of his life.
Yeah, so that's how bad it got me. It got me twisted up at the time.
Yep.
So, anyways, that being said, I've been working on that shift, that initial rotation to side snap kick. Not even trying the second one because, what my understanding...
Just the left one, not the right one.
Well, because the right one, you're going straight from Fudodachi into the side snap kick. There is no pull your feet together and snap out. You go from the stance
just from
there.
The floor up, but it's still a little rotation.
It is, but it's a different feeling altogether.
I guess. Oh, yeah, because it's not like...
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Backwards turn.
So it's a different feeling, so I'm working on...
It's been so long since I did Sochin a couple days ago, or this morning, so...
Right? What are you working on?
I'm actually ending up Sochin. I almost just said Fudodachi. Sochin. Did it for like 8 months or something. I don't really know. The last thing I'm just trying to fix is this section with the double back fist at the front leg front kick, back leg front kick, double back fist doodad. just trying to make sure that both of those are effective. And then this morning I started working on, drum roll, Hangetsu. The other one with the weird stances. Oh boy. I figure like I wore out like the outside of my hips pretty good, like to where I'll need a hip replacement. Now I'm going to wear out the inside of my hips really good, so I really need a replacement by the end of this year. That's a joke, by the way, because I have bad A Fudodachis now. Right? They're good.
Yes, dear.
They're better now. Okay, well, thanks for listening or watching. If you're watching,
Yeah,
not
whatever.
that you're missing much.
You're not.
If you're not
really.
watching, but anyhow.
But yes, dear.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.